evening and welcome to the gala reading and closing ceremony of the 27th Annual Campus Literature Week from the Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies in the Faculty of Humanities and Education here at the UWI St. Augustine campus. Dr. Suzanne Bird, Head of Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies, Professor Rhoda Raddock, our writer-in-residence, Ms. Ingrid Persaud, Bocas Literature Fest, our distinguished and specially invited guests, members of the audience. A hearty and warm welcome to you all for coming out and supporting our gala this evening. What a wonderful way to close off an incredible week of Campus Literature Week 2025. I would now like to ask our Head of Department, Dr. Suzanne Bird, to come to the stage and give an introduction. Please give her a hearty welcome.
So good evening, everyone, friends, keynote speaker, Ingrid Persaud, specially invited guests, colleagues, students, friends, family. So it is my honor to welcome you to, as was said, the 27th installation of Campus Lit Week here at the University of the West Indies. This year's theme, Cultivating Legacy with Words, is in keeping with the rich but often troubled Caribbean experience with words. It reminds us that for over 400 years, the enslaved and indentures were actively prevented from reading and writing as a means of keeping them forever in bondage. But for many of them, words were central survival mechanisms, acting as the means through which they told their stories, passed on their values, lessons, proverbs, norms, and spiritual processes. Today, this tradition continues in our many folkways, including our spoken word practices, our speech acts, and in popular musical forms such as calypso, rapso, soca, and chutney. Indeed, words are intrinsically bound up with how we see ourselves, define our identities, celebrate heritage, and give voice to marginalized groups in society. So this evening, we will bear witness to the work of Ms. Ingrid Persaud, who in many ways embodies this rich Caribbean legacy of words. Her chosen topic, entitled Love Legacies in the Caribbean Novel, emphasizes the ability of words to embody love, oftentimes in ways that actions fall far short. In this part of the world, where there has been so much physical, emotional, and epistemic violence, the notion of love legacies is like suckling a baby, a form of survival, but also an opportunity to bond, to make whole, and to transmit life. It represents what bell hooks described as a revolutionary act, simply because when put to work, love can challenge systems of domination, oppression, and inequality. But as she posits, this kind of love requires courage, accountability, and commitment. And I think it is an important note for us to reflect on, given the times we live in today. But in the midst of all of this uncertainty and doubt, words can offer us possibilities to confront difficult truths about ourselves and to re-emerge whole. But I'd be kind of naive if I did not mention our penchant for using words as weapons, to annihilate, to cut down, to destroy. That too is a way that we cultivate our legacy with words. However, it is my fervent hope that the theme of Ms. Persaud's talk encourages us to deploy loving words, both as a way in to ourselves through the construction of cultural confidence, and also as a way out of the many alienating technologies, structures, and negative practices, to find pathways that connect us to the power that resides in the working together as community, in our thoughts and in our actions. Thank you for attending and enjoy the evening.
Good evening, everyone. everyone. Welcome. And I'm going to do two of my songs from my album Off the Chain called Loving You and Plaguing. I know it will be relatable to some people, so hope you enjoy. And you can check out the videos on YouTube later.
I heard a rumor about you, that you're going round town looking for unsuspecting victims. Now you've set your sights on me. Well, I'm saying no way, I'm not going to be your latest victim. But all the while I'm saying no, the problem is you keep on playing my heart, you keep on playing my mind, you keep on playing my life. Oh, you keep on playing my heart, you keep on playing my mind, you keep on playing my life. Oh, you're saying that you changed, that a woman like me made you become a man of integrity. Ooh, am I to believe I've got such powers? You've got powers too. Although I try to walk away, the problem is you keep on playing my heart, you keep on playing my mind, you keep on playing my life. Oh, you keep on playing my heart, you keep on playing my mind, you keep on playing my life. Oh, I try to break free, but even in my dreams, you keep on stalking me. It's like you're haunting me. You light a flame in me. How can I break free? You keep on playing my heart. You keep on playing mine. You keep on playing my life. You keep on playing mine. You keep on playing my heart. You keep on playing mine. You keep on playing my mind. You keep on playing my life. Oh, yes you do. Playing my mind. Yeah. Ooh.
Now, Loving You. So,
Oh no, can't let you go. just can't tell you, yeah. I've been so emotional, baby, all this time. But I just ain't ready, yeah. Day by day, weeks go by, you're the only person on my mind. Hard to express my feelings since then, so caught up in the days like it would never end. Up to now, things never get better, so I decided to write you a letter about how I feel, but I can bring myself to reveal, oh baby, how you stole my heart. How I can't let go. Oh baby, how I love you so. How I can't let go. I've been loving you for the longest time, but I just can't tell you, yeah. I've been so emotional, baby, all this time, but I just ain't ready, yeah. And if you see me, might be too late. I don't know if I could freeze you again. Oh no, not today, baby. My eyes keep gazing, and my smile keep fading. So baby, here's my heart, it's this love song, yeah. Oh baby, how you stole my heart. How I can't let go. Oh baby, how I love you so. How I can't let go. So as I said, this song may be relatable to some people. So if it is, and you get somebody to go, you have these feelings for, but you're not revealing it, just use loving you, and it will tell your heart story. You just play the music, and you just sing, and you just give the person. This is what you do. Oh baby, how you stole my heart. How I can't let go. Oh baby, how I love you so. How I can't let go. Oh baby, how you stole my heart. How I can't let go. Oh baby, how I love you so. How I can't let go. Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to introduce our wonderful writer-in-residence and featured speaker for tonight, Miss Ingrid Persaud. Ingrid Persaud is a Trinidadian writer, artist, and former legal academic who lives in London. Her prize-winning debut novel, Love After Love, Faber and Faber 2020, won the Costa First Novel Award 2020, Authors Club First Novel Award 2020, and the Indie Book Award for Fiction in 2021. Her short story, The Sweet Sop, also won the BBC National Short Story Award 2018 and the Commonwealth Short Story Prize 2017. Her second novel, The Lost Love Songs of Boise Sing, Faber and Faber 2024, was published in April 2024. Persaud is the writer-in-residence at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine Campus 2025. Following her reading, Ms. Persaud will be in conversation with Shivanee Ramlochan. Shivanee Ramlochan is a Trinidadian poet, arts reporter, and blogger. Her first collection of poems, Everyone Knows I Am a Haunting, was shortlisted for the 2018 Felix Dennis Prize for Best First Collection. Please give a hearty and warm round of applause to welcome to the stage Miss Ingrid Persaud.
Hi everyone, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here at Campus Lit Week. I'm Shivanee Ramlochan. And I'm very excited to be here with Ingrid Persaud today. Please give her a round of applause in advance for reading. And Ingrid, we're going to dive right into your first reading.
Sure. So, the first reading is from Love After Love, and it's just a really short one from the first chapter of the book. And the book is Love After Love. If you're going to borrow or steal, you steal from the best. So it's from the poem by Derek Walcott. And it's a story about an unusual family, and it's written in several voices. And this first bit that I'm going to read is in the voice of Betty. In tutus, I dished out the stewed chicken, vegetable rice, and green salad. Sunil used the fork like it was a shovel. When he's like this, anything can become an argument, and any argument can become a fight. Like salt cheap, but I hardly put salt in the food. He rocked back in his chair. If looks could kill. You telling me you cooked this chicken and didn't put one set of salt in the pot? Silence. So what I tasting? Something must be wrong with my mouth. Oh, I tasting salt too. You know my pressure high and you giving me salt? Like you want to kill me, eh? I was careless. I'd left the rolling pin on the drain board, easy reach of Sunil's chair. That rolling pin might have hit the wall or the bed or the chair, but it found me. Doctor said the ulna and the radius snapped in two. My arm was in a cast when we buried Sunil a week later. At the funeral, I told people it was no big deal. I must stop being so careless with ladders. But I took half and left half. People used to look at me and Sunil and say, Betty girl, you're real lucky. In my head, I wanted to ask if they're making joke. Lucky? That man only gave love you could feel. He cuff you down, honeymoon. He give you a black eye, true love in your tail. He break your hand, a love letter. He put you in hospital for a week, love will stay the course. He take a knife and stab your leg, until death do us part. And the second reading is, no, don't talk. I wrote this a while ago. It's nothing to laugh about. So the next bit is Mr. Chaitan. He's a lodger, and he moves in, and this is the day he moves in. 1 second. So this is Mr. Chaitan's voice. Miss Betty declared she was leaving the gentleman to sort out everything and going to take her 5 minutes. Solo, sorry, I should have said Solo is the little son, Betty's little son. Solo put himself in charge of settling me into the house. I was trying to unpack, but the boy kept calling me. Could he show me his room? 2 minutes later, he wanted to explain how to operate the TV. I had barely packed a drawer when he demanded I inspect the kitchen. What to do? He was only being friendly. Solo showed me everything, down to turning on the water heater if there wasn't enough hot water in the pipe. He was a completely different child from the morning they'd stopped to give me a drop. A right little chatterbox. Mr. Chayton, is that the last box you're bringing up? Yes, you stay. There's nothing else to bring. Ouch, oh geez and peas, that hurt. I had stumped my so-and-so toe on the sharp edge of the concrete step. Books tumbled out the box I was carrying. A torchlight went clanking down the steps. Solo rushed to help. You all right, Mr. Chayton? You all right? My toe, damn. That nail going to turn blue. I hit it and then the torch dropped on top of it. The boy ran after the torch and scooped up the books. You want ice to put on your toe? Don't worry, I'll manage. These steps are very dangerous. My daddy fell down these same steps and died right here. So true, right here. I don't remember anything because I was small, but I know he fell down. I'm sorry. Sometimes he used to drink, get drunk, and fall down. You mustn't say that about your father. But Mommy told me that happened. I hoped Miss Betty wasn't listening. Her window was open, so unless she was sleeping hard, she must have heard. Children these days. I'm sure your father was a good man. Just please be very, very, very careful on the steps, okay? Especially if you come home drunk. You're not going to see me drunk. I take my carib or a stab now and then, but I'm not a drinker. And Sulu, you must be careful on the step too. If I knew about your daddy's accident, I wouldn't have let you run up and down with boxes. I'm accustomed to these steps. Nothing will happen to me. He bent down and picked up a large plastic bag. A boy in my class said he'd his teeth carried beer from the fridge and drink it in the backyard. I hope you never do that. Mommy said that's one thing she will give me legs for. I could do anything but that. It took the both of us till evening to put everything in place. Of course, I could have done it all much faster, but Solo refused to leave my side. I didn't mind, and although the boy's blabbing non-stop, half the time he's muttering to himself. At dinner, Miss Betty acted like she hadn't heard what Solo had said about his father. Still, it bothered me. People like to run their mouth, especially when it's nothing to do with them. No, I wouldn't want that for these two. About 8:30, I asked Solo, please, let's knock off for the day. What wasn't put away could wait. Solo, you can help me again, but not too early. It's Sunday tomorrow. Okay, I won't come to your room and wake you up then. Before you go, come let me whisper something in your ears. He smiled and came close. You mustn't go around telling people that your father used to drink. It doesn't sound nice, especially since he's passed, and it will make your mom cry. He leaned into my ear and whispered back, my mommy wouldn't cry for that. Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for that evening. Thank you for that, Ingrid. It's been a week here on campus of celebrating stories in all their forms. And Ingrid, as I think, just in case you're unfamiliar with her books, is something of a master storyteller. I think that's fair to say. This is not just me saying it. I happen to work at Paper-Based Bookshop. Ingrid's books, both of them, so both Love After Love, which you've just heard from, and her new novel, The Lost Love Songs of Boys You Sing, remain in such high demand. And one of the main reasons people come again and again to get the books is because they find them intensely full and teeming with stories they both relate to, sometimes fear and sometimes love. So Ingrid, let's talk about storytelling a bit. And since we've heard from Love After Love, let's guide us through a bit where the igniting spark of this particular story came from.
you know, you're never writing the book that you think you're writing. So the spark for Love After Love, and what was the first chapter for a very long time in the writing, actually turns out to be something that's 3/4 of the way into the book. And it's a scene where Solo, as a young man, is in New York and he goes to see a sex worker to exchange emotional pain for physical pain. And don't ask me why that came to me, but that was the first scene that I wrote, and I didn't know what would happen, and so I just kept thinking about how does a person in their early 20s arrive at feeling that low, and who are the people in his life, and as I asked more questions, the other characters came. So that's how it began.
I mean, homecoming and building a home and sustaining a home are very important to Love After Love, and Betty, Mr. Chetan, and Solo make mistakes, I think it's fair to say, in how they assemble this home together, but the times in which their unusual and perhaps atypical family really comes together are some of the most touching and moving in the book. So let's talk a bit, I think, about different kinds of home and family and what different family expressions look like. As we know, in our Trinidadian and Caribbean space, the idea of one nuclear family is such a myth almost. So how do you shape this family in this novel?
I think it's not just a myth for us, it's a myth that persists everywhere. And the idea that family can only be these blood ties of a mother, father, and children, something I've always questioned. And so I wanted to explore how we make our own families. And when I wrote the book, I was very, I think, idealistic about how we make those groupings. I think I'm less so now, and I don't know why it's happened, but there's something about the homes that we create after our first family that never quite live up to what we expect. Maybe it's because your sibling that you grew up with loves you to death but also pushed you down the stairs, and it's this very complicated bond. And when you choose your family, you choose a less complicated bond. You tend to choose people who you just really get along well with, and they're not going to throw you down the stairs. They're just going to be incredibly loving and kind. So I sort of, so I don't know, do you call it family, do you call it home, but whatever it is, it's our search for inner peace of some kind.
Yeah, Suzanne, in her opening remarks, alluded to how important the concerns of love are to I think not just your novels, but to that broad and wide pantheon we call Caribbean storytelling. And in Love After Love in particular, for those of you who haven't read it yet, you will find pretty early into the book that love and a certain kind of violence are almost impossible to untangle. And the violence when it comes, and it comes quite early, don't think that's a spoiler to say, is almost as terrifying and I think instinctive as taking a breath. It feels like it's both unavoidable and written into the fabric of, yes, this particular home and the person who experiences it, but also to society as a whole in this visioning of Trinidad. So Ingrid, let's talk about that love and that violence and how they intertwine.
And I'm worried sometimes, having, you know, the book is out in the world and there's nothing you can do. People will interpret it as they like and as they must. But the notion that we have some sort of extra purchase on domestic violence, I think, is so wrong. We're a small society, and therefore news travels. We live closer to each other. We know more about each other, and so maybe the incidence of violence in the home is something that gets reported more, or often with very salacious details. But our figures for domestic violence are no different. So domestic violence is something that we should all be concerned about wherever we live. It happens in the most, you think, does it belong to a particular class or sector of society? And it doesn't. And indeed, if it happens in the sectors and classes that you don't expect it, your reporting rate is likely to be even lower, because who wants to know that story? It seems like we're here to celebrate love, and I'm only talking about negative things about love. I don't mean to do that. But also, I think we should get away from the notion that love is only about romantic love, that which is what is so prized and privileged in our lives, and I certainly don't. And I hope in my work that I don't privilege romantic love.
No, I think for those of us who've spent time with both books, and you track the through lines of themes in both Ingrid's novels, you'll know that in The Lost Love, songs of Boise sing, which I think you'd be hard pressed to call a love story, but there are many kinds of love moving through it, in the ways in which these four extraordinary women have confronted, yes, love, lived with, survived the infamous Boise sing. And those women, I think, for those of you who've read the book, and those of you poised to read it, will know that they haunt you in the most gratifying ways possible. So Ingrid, actually, did they haunt you? Not just in the writing of the book, but how have you been living with their voices in the aftermath of love songs being in the world?
They come at the most extraordinary times. So I think there's a sense of grief with a lot of the women. Grief that I couldn't do more for them, because I was writing about a particular period in time, and you can't give your characters more agency than they would have had at the time. And I was taking a little drive today, and I saw some bougainvillea outside a small house, and I don't know why, it just made me think of the women, and I felt sorry that I couldn't have given them a different outcome to their lives. That and I hoped that the young people today have better possibilities.
Does anyone here not know who Boise Sing is? Please, it's a safe, intimate space we have this evening. Like, gently indicate. We put up half a hand. Everyone is familiar with. Ingrid, do you wanna let the people? I feel like we have some shy folks here. We have some young folks here.
I know, because there's certainly a young friend of mine, and I'd be shocked if he knew. Do you know who Boise Sing? No, you don't know. Okay. So Boise Sing was a Bajan. And his Wikipedia entry needs correcting, but that's for another time. So he did lots of things in his life. He really did live. He was a pimp, he was a businessman, he ran clubs, he ran women, he ran cards, gambling king, and he was also, for a moment in time, a preacher. And he was such a successful mass murderer, or serial murderer rather, that we don't know how many people he perhaps got rid of in the Gulf of Paria. But his MO was he had fishing boats, and when the fishing wasn't working out, he just switched his cargo to people. That was, a typical Boise move. And so he would carry people to the main and back. And these people would be going under the radar. They couldn't go by sort of official means, so they usually have liquidated their assets. And Boise would take them out into the Gulf, and he had a particular spot he liked. And he would, the folklore is that he would hit them on the head, knock them out, and tie some sort of heavy metal to them so that they would sink, and he would relieve them of all their worldly goods. And someone lived to tell the tale, and there is a book that English journalist wrote about Boise Singh, and it was reissued certainly within the last decade with a fabulous introduction by Professor Shivanee Ramlochan. And I didn't want to write about Boise. I wanted to write about the women in Boise's life, because in a typical story of an anti-hero or a hero who's a man, they appear out of nothing, and they are amazing. They just are. And I was like, don't believe that. Who's helping him? And it's usually, sadly, a woman who is helping along. And where are these women, and why are they silent? Why have they been written out? And it's particularly egregious because they are so silent that the last opportunity to engage with those women would have been when that book was originally done. He could have asked those questions, he could have gone out, but it was unthinkable that the women's stories mattered. So they aren't there. And so this is an entire work of fiction. Please don't take it as anything other than that. This is my imagined lives of these women.
So their names are Popo, Manalala, Doris, and Rosie. Sorry, Ingrid, do you have a favorite? Before I get into this question, this is my cheeky side question.
That's a typical question of asking which of your children is your favorite, right? So I'll tell you what I think of my children. So I love Rosie because she's so feisty. Doris, what are you going to say? I'm real glad that one child I don't have to worry about. She can always see about herself. Popo, well, he's always lose one, and well, that one was going through. And then you had Manalala. And Manalala, well, that is the cross that you have to bear, right? For your whole life. You're there hoping for better. But like she can't live, she had hard. So those are my children. And Manalala was the one who was most difficult to write. And so I have, I guess, a particular affection that I never have to write about her again. Yeah. It's like all done. It was really difficult.
So these four women, I have a favorite. I think everyone who's read the book or spoken to has a favorite. It's hard not to pick sides. It's hard not to.
Gosh, and who's yours?
It's Popo.
It's Popo.
It's Popo.
It was a hard.
I have to resist spoiling for everybody who hasn't read it, but I found her the most haunting, and in some ways the most relatable. And so which leads me to what I'm about to say, which is that Ingrid has very kindly given you the rundown on what Boise, the real life impresario of crime, was like. So you might think in this novel, gosh, these 4 women are going to be so hard done by, so downtrodden. They'll just live under his thumb in fear and pain and regret. And there is that. But also, there are these remarkable, just everyday subversions that they're enacting. These women are at various times, and some, not all of them, are child mothers, lovers, some grew up with him. And so you'll find one or more of the 4 of them at different times in the novel tending his wounds, giving him solicited or unsolicited advice, looking out for him, protecting his non-legal business interests. They were doing important work throughout the book in ways that might not be coded as feminist or fierce now, but there's such fierceness to them. So let's talk about their ferocity.
I certainly felt that. I felt that their story is the story of any woman who lives with a strong man, who takes up all the oxygen in the room, and we know loads of men like that. So how does the partner of someone like that manage? And I didn't realize, until much later that was the core question in the book. And these 4 women were 4 different approaches to dealing with that. And how does this subversion happen? Some people have read the book and said that they actually felt sorry for Boise because he was kind of this badge on the outside, but on the inside he was very much manipulated and kind of controlled by these women. And they control by recognizing that that power is what Boise was after. It didn't actually matter how the power happened. So the wealth, the fancy outfits, all those kind of physical assets were a way to try and express power, because he felt like a powerless coolie boy in Port of Spain trying to compete with established French Creole businesses. And that's essentially his problem, that's his bugbear. And so these women are all at various times, they see through him. They see that that's the power, and they either give him advice about it, or they soothe him, or they provide some sort of nourishment for him to kind of come to, and then kind of go back into the world. It's a slightly dirty book. If you're worried about reading about sex, you probably shouldn't read my stuff, because the role of sex in a relationship and how it can be used and manipulated is part of both books, I think.
Yes, and also I think the intersections of sex and violence, and where those lines are between what is sexual violence, what is consensual, loving intercourse. It's all very, these are important questions that get tackled in the book. I don't know that they ever result in binary answers, but I think they're the more worthwhile because they don't necessarily.
Yeah, and I'm surprised no one ever asks me about that, and I think there are some fairly, slightly things that people don't talk about in terms of intimacies, like, this very dominant man in the world is incredibly submissive in the bedroom, and he seeks out submission, and he wants to be infantilized almost, and absolutely no one's ever mentioned that. And I'm like, dude, the man is suckling like a baby. Doesn't no one think that's a bit strange? You're suckling one moment and then you're kind of mass murdering on the next. You know, it's kind of weird juxtaposition, but maybe my readers are just too polite.
Listen, these are the gems and treasures you can expect to have uncovered at Campus Literature Week. So, again, back to love. Love, violence, and power. We all know if the book follows a trajectory that we understand, what Boise's fate will be. And so we have a sense, I think from the outset, and maybe this is a craft-based question, really, what these women's trajectories will be, but you can't tell, at least I couldn't tell, hoping against hope. Something is going to turn up with them. One of them is going to get to ride off into the sunset. And maybe there is a kind of happiness that at least one of them attains. I won't, say for whom that is, but the question is, did you feel certain you knew their stories all perfectly mapped out on the outset? Did they surprise you on their journeys?
So I'm a terrible seat of the pants writer. I never have the end of the story in sight. Although using the timeline of Boise Singh's life, he dies, right? So that's a kind of given. That's not a spoiler alert. So I have that to work with. But I didn't know what the arc of their stories would be. And I wrote each one individually and rewrote their arcs many times before it felt plausible, authentic. So, yeah, they did surprise me. As I said, Manilana, she was just excruciating to write. I didn't know what to do with her. Because her choices were so far from anything that I could imagine myself doing. And yet, why is that? The love we have for our children is so visceral. Why wouldn't we do the things that Manilana does?
Yeah, I think some people go into Lost Love Songs of Boise saying they're the antithesis of Manilana, but end up feeling confronted, perhaps in the ways that you're talking about, by just what they would do for love, for the love of a man who doesn't ever manage to correspond to what their hopes of him are. Boise never really comes up to scratch for her. And the love of the child who's a product of that union, for whom anything becomes imaginable. And if you go to the depths of what is possible within that.
Yeah. So I get, when we talk about love, I get to explore the bonds that of love that are part of my own life, and the love one has for one's children, the love one has for one's friends, one's partner. And I think I like to show that this notion that without romantic love you are less than or incomplete is entirely a myth. There's so much more.
Ingrid, I feel like perhaps people might like to hear from the Lost Love Songs. People, yes? Is that a...
Yes. Sure.
Please treat us.
So, in Lost Love Songs, it's written in the voices of the four women. Boise never gets to have his own chapter. I'm sure if there's an afterlife, he's really pissed off about that. So I'm going to read you, it starts with a fake news report and then a chapter by Rosie. And I have to say it's a fake news report because we went to great lengths, the publisher, to make it look authentic. And they did such a good job that one critic said, you know, how lucky I was to have that newspaper article to reprint. The Trinidad Monitor, Port of Spain, Trinidad, British West Indies, Friday, 23rd August, 1957. The End of Boise. By Jared Max Davidson, staff reporter. Knowing the end was coming, John Boise Singh, the Raja, who once controlled illegal activities in Port of Spain and in the Gulf of Paria, said, I have lived. I have seen things and I have done things. Now I must go, but I am innocent of this crime. I always try to help people, and that is how I got a great deal of my troubles. That is what has me here now. He asked to go first, but on 20th August 1957 was made to wait an hour until 8 o'clock after Boland Ramkisoon's body was cut down and laid aside. A Catholic priest, Father Tiernan, who asked for his name not to be reported, walked him to the gallows. Wearing prison-issue white cotton pajamas, the Raja met death chanting, My Jesus mercy, my Jesus mercy, my Jesus mercy. As prescribed, the hangman was paid $77 per man for his duties. A Gregorio Brothers van took the body from the jail to the General Hospital and then to the St. James Cemetery, where Boise was laid to rest in a crude white pine unpainted coffin, his name written on top in chalk. None of his close relatives, seen visiting the condemned man in the days leading up to the hanging, was present at the graveside. Rosie. While the shop ain't busy, I told myself, Rosie girl, drink a cup of coffee, tea and check the papers. Nobody's coming for a shot around this hour. And on the dry goods side, there's always one person throughout the day. I sit down good when I spotted the wretch. Man dead and he's still making front page. And look at that. Boise playing innocent down to the end. Exactly who that badger think he fooling? At least now he's in the ground, we might get an ease from seeing him all the time. Something else will take over the news. Every night the Lord see me on my knees begging that boy doesn't fill the gap he's left. They say goat don't make sheep. Well, this is one time I hope they're wrong, yes? A sudden hard rain made me put down the papers. 2 school children, a girl about 7 and a boy child a little younger, rushed to shelter under the shop awning. The way she held on to the boy, I could tell she was a good big sister. I called to them, Come inside and don't get wet. You see how the sun's still shining? Rain go past now for now. They came and stood by the door. I smiled. Come in, I don't bite. The girl pulled her brother where they were safe from the pelting rain. You know that when sun shining and rain falling, monkey does be marrying. Either that or the devil and his wife fighting. Poor children looked at me like I was about to gobble them up. A good 5 minutes hadn't passed and rain stopped just so. The 2 bolted. I watched them speed off, holding hands tight. Steam rose from the hot pitch, releasing a sickly sweet smell that made me feel slightly nauseous. Then something happened. Maybe it was the smell, the pitch smell, or the little boy and girl holding hands, or just reading the death notice. Could be all three. But suddenly, I realized what had been bothering my head. I was thinking of Boise. What's that game children play, the one with two circles holding hands and singing in turns? Ah, yes. In a fine castle, do you hear my CCO? In a fine castle, do you hear my CCO? Without missing a beat, the second circle would reply. Ours is the prettiest, do you hear my CCO? Ours is the prettiest, do you hear my CCO? What song did we throw back? Ah, yes. We want one of them, do you hear my CCO? We want one of them, do you hear my CCO? From the side, under a laden guava tree, a boy, had to be less than 10, was watching us playing in the road, our eyes made full. Without words, he knew that we coolie orphans, holding hands while singing louder and louder, had room for other unclaimed children. Which of us do you want? Do you hear my CCO? I broke hands mid-song so he could join my circle. He came forward slowly and gave me his hand. That little hand squeezed mine just a bit tighter than the others. I squeezed back. Which of us do you want? Do you hear my CCO? A scared boy, out on the road by himself, nobody looking to see what he was doing. That barefoot, raggedy child grew into John Boise Singh, the Raja. How'd that happen?
Thank you, Ingrid. You've now heard from both Ingrid's novels, which leads me to invoke one of my favorite quotes by you, Ingrid. I'm going to quote you back to yourself.
Okay.
You've said it.
Okay.
You said this to Pri.
Wasn't me, wasn't there. Shiny defense.
You said this to Pri, actually, I think in the aftermath of publishing Love After Love. Why I must translate into the English of a very particular minority who carry on like them own the language. Nah. So, end quote. And I think you'll understand why I've waited till now to bring this piece of brilliance from Ingrid into the conversation, is that the English in both novels is indisputably ours, and all of its Pekong and its Bacchanal, its Mauvais Langue and its Drive, its sense of doing exactly what it wants and speaking in one or more of the many ways in which we speak to each other. And Ingrid, did you know from the outset, both your books were going to do this thing with English, this truth?
Yes, I think it's very much a decision that I've made about my work, and I feel strongly that that we should own our language and treat it with the same entitlement and respect that is given to other Englishes. And so there's no glossary, there's translation, and I think the integrity of the language stands up. I've had some pushback in terms of translation. So often translators tell me they have trouble with some of the words, but you know, I'll never know how good or bad it is because I don't read Korean. So it's like whatever you do, go too hard. But language is a living thing, and one of the things I'm very conscious of is policing the language. So we've got our Creole dictionary, which was done some time ago, and then we have Kutsi Kutala. But these are books that belong to a particular time now, and they remain incredibly important to us. But I think there is, so much more that's come through since then, and I don't know it. And so I am, daily listening to TikTok videos and eavesdropping on conversations and begging young people to tell me what are the right words to use, and so that when I meet a friend, it's a dog and not just hi, something like that. And I know that I come across as stoosh, apparently. So, I'm learning, and I want to be open and constantly learning, because our language is living and it deserves to be expressed fully. And people who follow the work of Caribbean writers who use our English, Caribbean English, are able to see the language evolving.
I think this ties in beautifully to another favorite thing of yours that you've said, is that a huge part of your process and your craft is, I think the quote is high-class macroing.
God, yes.
I think so, yeah. Tell us about how macroing helps make a book, or makes two books in fact.
I am indeed a terrible macro. And I think it's because all writers are macro. I'm just owning up, okay? Because you're a macro.
Oh yeah.
You're right. And those in the audience, you do it, right? And it's because we are never off duty as writers. We are constantly kind of open to whatever is around us, and we're very sensitive to language. So I can't help but be a macro. So this morning I was in a public space having breakfast, and there was a whole conversation going on about who take which COVID injection, and if the Chinese did really have COVID and give all of us the COVID, and if the Chinese injection was one that they say they wasn't giving us in Trinidad, but they really give us, and how we think Oxford is such a big thing, and look how bad Oxford injection turned out to be, and all of this was going on before 8 a.m., and it was like, wow. I was like, yeah, I gotta get to my, to my iPad and write everything down. And so I'm constantly writing stuff in my phone. I just kind of write whatever I hear. And I've met a couple of times with the graduate students here, and I told them, about this macroing that I do. And sometimes I don't have to macro very much; it just falls in my lap. So my cousin came to see me, and he had a bandage on his arm. And, I was really sorry for him, and I was saying, oh God, you're poor thing. And he said, yeah, it had, but you know what? When the doctor was bandaging up, I see my blood. I have good looking blood, if you see my blood. And I'd never thought of blood as your blood could be ugly or good looking, But there he was, characterizing his blood as good looking. And I just thought that's just brilliant. And that's my cousin. And he will not be, he won't get credit for that, but and I will use it.
I'm looking forward to that popping up, hopefully in book number 3. I've been monopolizing Ingrid really shamelessly. Would anyone in the audience like to chat to Ingrid directly? Do you have a question for her about Love After Love, Lost Love Songs and Boys You Sing, some other third mysterious, maybe illicit thing that you want to ask her about now? Please feel free. Or comments, either.
Just a question, just I haven't read either of them.
They're available in all good bookstores, particularly paper-based.
But I found it very interesting, and I said that most persons haven't really spoken about it. I'd just like to hear if you would, without spoiling anything, give some more thoughts on it, about voicing being this Raja, and yet being like an infant when it comes to sexuality.
It's difficult to tell you anything about that without you reading the book, because it's a subtle thing. It's not that he comes home and is in nappies and goes out and is, in suits and facing the world. It's not such a dichotomy. It's about subtle ways in which he gives up power to these women, and sexually is one of the ways. Not to all women and not all the time, because he also wields violence and sex as well. So it's flipping and flopping. It's not a straightforward thing. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think I can kind of tell you anything more. But as I said, available at all good bookstores.
Anyone else? Thank you for that, Teresa.
Hi, good day everyone. So my question would be, you spoke about the characters being your children in the Lost Love Songs. My favorite character, much like Shivanee's, was Coco. And given her conclusion, it was difficult for me. Was it as difficult for you writing that for her?
Yes. Yes. It was really awful. And it took a long time to write. Those scenes where you're actually writing about a violent death is really difficult for me, because you kind of live and breathe your characters, and so I almost write with my eyes closed. And I write really slowly when I'm doing that, because it's like, you have to do the act, you don't want to do the act. And similarly, when I was writing Love After Love, a character dies a violent death, and I couldn't do it. And in the end, I don't write it, in the sense that it's someone reports it. I couldn't actually write it. So sometimes you can't even do it when you know you have to.
Thank you. Anyone else? This shyness will abate, I think, over wine and snacks afterwards when people are getting books signed. But thank you, audience, for that participation. And Ingrid, I think as we're going to wind down this chat, which could go on forever, and we'll probably turn into a whole set of bacchanal between you and me.
Yes.
But let's not do that on stage in front of folks. I think let's return to this thought of love, and let's close with the idea of how love manifests and grows, and how there's space for love in both books. And in both your novels, love is present, but it's also a really compelling, slantwise thing. So we get to love stories, we get to them through concealments and secrets and traumas and bacchanal, and perhaps, all the ways we are living and loving, both in a book that is in contemporary times, in a book that is historical fiction. What have your own books shown you in the aftermath of their birth about love for yourself?
It's told me that to love is to have courage, and that loving is difficult, and when you least want to do it, it's required most. And I guess I knew all of those things beforehand, but they felt more real after sinking into the lives of these characters, because you live them all the time. And in some spooky ways, they've also kind of infiltrated my own life. You just never know. Maybe, you know, at some subconscious level, you're trying to solve a question for yourself about love and its meaning. And you write thinking you're writing in a way which is outside of you, and it is outside of you, but it informs who you are too.
Ingrid, thank you for sharing so generously with us about both your books today. Please let's have a round of applause for Ingrid Persaud. Both Ingrid's books and other incredible books by Caribbean authors are available downstairs at paper-based bookshop. Perhaps I'll let whoever's doing the undoubtedly lovely closing remarks to tell you that. And thank you again for your attention and your interest, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this evening's formal proceedings to a close, on behalf of all of us at the Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies, I wish to extend sincerest gratitude to the key persons responsible for tonight's successful event. Pro Vice Chancellor Professor Rose Marie Bell Antoine, Campus Principal, UWI St. Augustine, Professor Derek Chady, Deputy Principal, UWI St. Augustine, Dr. Elizabeth Walcott Hackshaw, Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Education, Dr. Suzanne Burke, the Head of Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies, Ms. Georgia Alexander, Librarian, Humanities Division, Alma Jordan Library. We must also acknowledge the hard work of her library staff and technical officers, the UWI Marketing and Communications Department, the Center for Language Learning, including the wonderful technicians, the Division of Facilities Management, our campus security services, media personnel, the paper-based bookshop team, our caterers, Abba's Table, Mr. Roger McFarlane, Technical Assistant, Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies, Ms. Nicole Solomon, Clerical Assistant for Literatures in English, Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies, all of our lunchtime readers and participants during our Campus Literature Week, MFA students, MFA Coordinator Dr. Malia Mai, and a very special thank you to our wonderful guests. I invite you all to join us downstairs to buy our books from Paper-Based Bookshop as we open up this evening's Mix and Mingle segment. Thank you all once again.